If you would have asked me 5 years ago what the on-trend brewing thing would be in 2021, I would have guessed something with the letters I, P, and A. And I would have been wrong. Laugh all you want, but hard seltzer is here to stay. And Imperial Yeast's new seasonal strain W04 Paramount can help brewers get the most out of their water fermentations. A clean and aggressive fermenter, Paramount will produce an excellent seltzer with low fusel alcohols, plus it's gluten-free. If you tried making seltzer with standard ale or lager strains, you know the struggle, and Imperial Yeast is here to help with W04 Paramount. Learn more about this novel strain at imperialyeast.com and pick up your W04 Paramount before it's too late. The pattern is predictable. Someone who enjoys drinking craft beer gets introduced to the idea that they can make it themselves, picks up the hobby of home brewing, gets a few batches under their belt, then begins dreaming of the possibility of perhaps turning their hobby into a career. Indeed, the thought of not only spending all day designing recipes and brewing beer, but making money doing it is rather enticing, enough for some to actually take the leap. You're listening to the Brewlosophy Podcast. I'm your host, Marshall Schott, and in this exBEERience episode, I'll be sitting down with some good friends from our area's newest brewery, Crow and Wolf Brewing Company, to chat about their experience going pro. Now, as some of you may recall, we dropped a similar episode back in May of 2020, where Brewlosophy's Malcolm Fraser shared his unique experience with making brewing a career. There are obviously various ways to enter the brewing profession. All have their pros, all have their cons, and I am really excited for you all to get to hear a different perspective from some folks I have a ton of respect for. Plus, they make some really incredible beer that we're going to drink on the show. So, well, if you're a fan of this show and you'd like to receive a reward for your support, consider becoming a patron of Brewlosophy over at patreon.com/Brewlosophy, where you make a small pledge and receive rewards like access to unpublished contributor recipes, unique discounts at YakimaValleyHops.com, and an invitation to a monthly live Q&A session with somebody in the brewing world. Our guest for this month is Casey Hellwig from Imperial Yeast. In addition to her vast knowledge of all things yeast, Casey is a very experienced brewer and an all-around awesome person. She'll be taking questions from patrons on Saturday, February 27th, 2021. So make sure to make your pledge of just $3 per month over at patreon.com/Brewlosophy by Friday, February 26th to make sure you're a part of the event. It's going to be a very good one. I know Casey well, and she's just an awesome person to sit and chat with. All past sessions are stored on our private Facebook page, so patrons can go back and watch them whenever they like. Again, you can learn more about the rewards we offer for your support at patreon.com/Brewlosophy. Another really easy way to support us is by using the links found at brewlosophy.com/support when shopping online. Your experience doesn't change at all, and we get a little kickback for the referral. And finally, if you wouldn't mind letting us know what you think about this show by leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcast or wherever it is you listen to podcasts, we really would appreciate it. Not only does it give us an idea of what our listeners think about the show in general, but it helps those who may not have heard of us yet to find the show. I was looking through our Apple Podcast reviews recently and noticed that we've surpassed the 800 review mark, which is pretty impressive for a show of just a few years old. So thanks everyone for doing that. Feedback is brought to you by Brewers Hardware, who offer brewers beautiful stainless gear such as the turnkey BH15 Pilot brewing system, which has a hard plumb manifold to eliminate all hosing changes during the brew process. Brewers Hardware has a ton of unique purpose-built products useful to both professionals and home brewers. Go see for yourself at brewershardware.com, and don't forget to mention Brewlosophy at checkout to receive a free gift. That's brewershardware.com. Frank Rinaldi, like us, is a big fan of American Amber Ale, who had some feedback on our recent Short and Shoddy episode where we focused on this style. Frank says, I agree American Amber Ale is underappreciated and underrepresented, but it's one of my favorites and my house beer that I try to never run out of. I just made a switch in my hop schedule to bring out the freshness and flavor of the hops, as they were tasting a bit herbal to me, perhaps similar to what you're describing as earthy and grassy. My schedule was 60-20-10. Now it's 60. Then I whirlpool at 175 Fahrenheit, that's 79°C, for 25 minutes. I'm still not all the way through Scott Janish's book, That's the New IPA, by our friend Scott Janish, but I have been reading and hearing a lot lately about eliminating mid-boil hops and moving to whirlpool, so I gave it a try. And then I also dry hopped half the batch. It was an incredible difference in flavor and aroma. The dry hopped portion was almost too hoppy when fresh, but as it's aged a few weeks, it's evening out nicely. You know, Frank, Frank, I hadn't really considered that earthy character as being a function of the hops at all, in fact, particularly as it relates to the timing of the kettle additions. It's been a characteristic in a few of these short and shoddy batches, and I've honestly just been chalking it up to something having to do with all the craft malts that I've been using of late. But I think it's an interesting hypothesis for sure, and definitely something I'll mess around with in the future. I certainly prefer my American Amber to have more fruity and piney hop character as opposed to that earthy and grassy characteristic. And while the short and shoddy batch we discussed in that episode was actually quite good, yeah, it was lacking in that department a bit. It wasn't as fruity as I would have liked it to be. Certainly not as fruity as Ray's original recipe. So yeah, I'll definitely be adapting my approach to hopping, kettle hopping future batches of amber ale. And I really like the idea of dry hopping amber ale too. I think we kind of touched on this in that episode, that there's a point to where an American amber ale can start to border on what's being called red IPA. And I almost feel like that dry hopping component does that. There's something to me about the balance of hop character and, amber ale malt character that's not too sweet or too roasty, but just that nice balance that really makes it an American amber ale. But still, yes, a dry hopped American amber ale can be absolutely fantastic. So I really appreciate the feedback, Frank. If you have show feedback, you could send it to feedback@brewlosophy.com or drop us a note on social media. Beer is obviously my preferred fermented beverage. I make a point of saying that quite often, but I do like other things such as cider, sake, and even mead, which I've been receiving quite a bit of in the mail lately from the likes of folks like listener Brent Hatakayama. He sent me a bottle of something he calls apricot, or is it apricot? I mix those two up. Semi-dry mead, which Brent said he made by steeping some herbal tea in 6 gallons of the second runnings from a batch of porter he made, adding 10 pounds of honey and fermenting it with a Kveik yeast, then racking that concoction onto 5 pounds of frozen apricots and leaving it for 10 days for bottle conditioning so that it would have a light carbonation. This interesting Braggot Melomel mead thing clocked in at just around 9% ABV.
1 minute beer review with Jersey and Tim. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Are you ready, Timmy? Woo! This looks like a full-up beer. It looks like an 805. Look at the colors, like an 805, Broheem. Whoa, it's not an 805 though, huh?
Damn.
There ain't no 805 of that. There might be a 508. But I like it. I like that. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Don't give me the stink eye. It doesn't. The stink eye.
It's weird.
Nobody can see you giving me the stink eye.
Would I?
I like it, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good, I guess.
It's like a watered down mead.
You're like a what? What? Mead? You don't know what a mead is.
That's what it's like.
Get out of here. That was a shot in the dark, and if it's right, there's no way.
That's my only description.
I will not allow you to be more learned than I am.
I'm an expert.
I quit. You show me the respect I deserve, or I quit.
Even a broken clock's right twice a day, right?
I don't know that I want to even talk to you. It's good. I like it.
Yeah, no, it is good. We're like the meads. I really don't like to drink too much, but this you can sit.
You know what, Timmy and I we've grown to like things that are less powerful. Like things that have just minor tastes like this, I like.
I actually like this.
I'm turning into an old person and I dig it, dude.
Welcome.
No, that's good. I like that a lot. That's really good. I give it at 6.9 jerseys.
I'm going to go with an 8 on this. I like this.
After reading Brent's description, I wasn't terribly sure what to expect in this apricot dry mead, but I have to say my expectations were not confirmed. It was actually really good. Kudos to Timmy Tim for calling out that it tasted like a mead. That boy good, right? He's getting real good. To my senses, it certainly had some mead-like characteristics, but it was notably lighter on the palate, not as sticky as it were, and had what I perceived as being more of like a tropical guava-like flavor to it. Very, very nice. Almost what some might describe as elegant or delicate. The carbonation, in my opinion, which it had a noticeable carbonation, but it wasn't stinging. It wasn't sparkling by any means, but it really made the drink altogether just more refreshing. And I'm kind of a fan of carbonation in general, and this idea of mead or honey, I guess fermented honey beverages having an element of carbonation is something I'm really digging lately. And furthermore, the idea of blending a low OG wort, such as the stuff from second runnings of a porter, like Brent did, with honey and possibly fruit to result in a relatively lower ABV mead-inspired drink is really cool. I think there's a lot of space to explore and experiment there. And Brent, yours was an impressive one, man. I really appreciate you sending that in for me to share with my friends. If you'd like to have your beer or any other fermented beverage you feel like sending in reviewed by Jersey and Tim on the show, you can email me, Marshall@brewlosophy.com, and I'll get you all set up. All right, when we come back from this break, the Crow and Wolf crew will be joining me to talk about their experience going pro. After a long brew day, the last thing I want to do is waste more time chilling wort. I've tried so many different options, and ultimately I settled on the super efficient immersion chillers made by Jaded Brewing. With the King Cobra and Hydra, I'm able to chill my entire batch of wort from boiling to just a few degrees above groundwater temperature in as little as 6 minutes. If an immersion chiller is right for your brewery, then do yourself a favor and check out all of the rad options Jaded Brewing has to offer at jadedbrewing.com. And be sure to let them know Brewlosophy sent you.
Compact and simple to use with a small footprint for brewing indoors, the Grainfather makes it easy for you to brew professional quality beers at home. The Grainfather is an all-in-one brewing system that lets you brew all-grain beer in a single, compact stainless steel unit. It uses an electric heating element and pump to maintain a constant temperature and to circulate the wort during the mashing and cooling stages. It also comes with a counterflow chiller to reduce chilling times and produce high-quality wort. And now, with the addition of their conical fermenter, the Grainfather takes things one step further by offering homebrewers state-of-the-art temperature-controlled fermentation just like commercial breweries use. And with the Grainfather Recipe Creator and Connect app, you can easily design a recipe, sync your brewing system with your phone, and then just sit back and relax as the app takes over and assures that you maintain your scheduled mash temps and boil schedule. Head to Grainfather.com to purchase your all-in-one brewing system today and to sign up for their free recipe creator tool. Once more, head on over to Grainfather.com, that's Grainfather.com, and get started today.
Family-owned Atlantic Brew Supply is the largest homebrew shop in the Southeast. No gimmicks, no multinational corporate overlords, and no BS. They offer exclusive malts, yeast, and more from local artisans, as well as award-winning recipe kits. They also sell professional brewing gear and cask equipment from sister companies ABS Commercial and Cask Supply. Most ingredients are available by the ounce, plus Atlantic Brew Supply has an on-site calculator to help you craft your best brew. Orders are processed same day, and 2-day shipping is guaranteed for East Coast customers. Get 15% off your first order using promo code BREWPOD, that's BRUPOD, at AtlanticBrewSupply.com. For many homebrewers, the dream of going pro remains just that, a dream. However, for a courageous few, it becomes a reality, and there are a number of ways this can happen. Like Brewlosophy's Malcolm Fraser, some land jobs at established breweries. Others, like Tommy Caprellian from Fresno's House of Pendragon Brewing Company, start by brewing on the nano scale and then growing over time. And then there are those who epitomize the go big or go home credo. Joining me now are my friends from one such brewery, the Fresno area's newest Crow and Wolf Brewing Company. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. This one has been a long time coming. We actually planned to record this episode last year, right around the time the pandemic hit, and we decided to hold off a bit because of the impact of the pandemic. But here we are today. I'm really stoked that we're finally able to make this work. Why don't we start with some introductions? Just tell us who you are and what you do.
Hey, good morning, Marshall. Thanks for having us on. My name is Don Anderson, currently the president of Crow and Wolf Brewing, and the guy that kind of tried to get this group together.
Hey, Marshall. This is Brad Gaines. I'm one of the brewers over at Crow and Wolf.
Hey, Marshall. Matt Heumann, owner at Crow and Wolf.
Hi, Marshall. Longtime fan, first-time caller. My name is Spencer Andrews, and I, too, am one of the brewers over at Crow and Wolf.
So we've all known each other for quite a while at this point. And, you know, the purpose of the our experience series on the Brewlosophy podcast in general is just to talk about experiences doing certain things in beer and brewing. And we started kind of a sub-series last year with Malcolm Fraser talking about his experience going pro. And the way that he did it was he actually got a job with Miller Coors first, and he was doing their really interesting job. He did their sensory analysis and went around and trained people to pair beer with food and stuff like that. Well, they nixed that whole program. And so then he moved into the craft brewing world with Fatheads. And now he's brewing, I forget what brewery he's at now, but he's brewing with another craft brewery out east, and I believe in Cincinnati area. we want to talk about the way that you guys got it all set, but there's obviously, this is a very intertwined group of people who have all come together to create Crow and Wolf. And so what I'd like to do is start off, I want to hear the whole story. I think our listeners would really enjoy hearing the story about a brewery that I feel like is doing it right. You know, like I said, go big or go home. 15 barrel batches right off the bat, huge, beautiful space. Let's hear the story. I think, Don, you probably, as the originator and the president, that feels good, doesn't it?
Yes and no.
You probably have a good place to start for the story.
Yeah, so, you know, kind of going back years, we all independently had our own kind of facets in brewing and home brewing mostly. Myself, I had a background in biochemistry, and so, you know, it's like cooking, right? You're taking ingredients and you're getting a product out with some manipulation. And over time, you get a little bit better in your craft and you bump into guys who do the same thing that you do, and they're better than you are. So you want to learn from them. And that's really kind of where I tied in. Matt Human ended up becoming my neighbor, and he'd been brewing for a really long time. I knew nothing about it. And so Matt kind of coached me along and babysat me through those initial batches, which really piqued my interest in making beer and having a great final output, because he's very detail oriented. And then from there, it was really kind of happenstance. I mean, we all knew each other peripherally, but we never sat down and actually talked about doing anything like this until fairly recently. And from there, the pieces just fell into place. And that's what really told me that it was the right way to go, because we had so many of the particular details that I think a lot of startup breweries struggle with. We had those outlined right on day one, right? We had 2 brewers who were really fantastic in commercial production, knew what they wanted to do. They were looking for some guidance and some support around, you know, starting a business and finding locations and things like that. So we kind of just pulled the team together because we were all friends in our own space before that.
Yeah.
And had a little bit of talent to lend to the general pool. And once we put everybody together, that pool was actually pretty strong. And that's really what got us to where we are today.
Yeah, there's it's fun having been a part of this friend group for as long as I have, and we'll go over some of our histories here together. But having been a part of the homebrewing scene here in the Central Valley of California for so long, I remember meeting Brad for the first time and watching him brew in a bag batches for San Joaquin Warthogs and all that. And then Matt was on the board of the homebrew club, local homebrew club when I joined, and that's how we became friends. And then Matt moved up to a certain neighborhood, and Don happened to live right. That's how you guys met, right?
Yeah, we met because we ended up, you know, a couple of houses apart in the same area of town. So yeah, kind of interesting. And
so what was it that sparked the idea? We're going to get into hearing how all of you guys got involved, but I feel like homebrewers, and this is not a show where we're going to be talking homebrewers out of not following their dreams. You do you know, but be prepared is what we're saying. I think there's so many things you have to consider if you want to do this thing and be successful at it. What was the spark for you? Because homebrewers brew a couple of batches, they realize it's easy and fun, and then they think they can make a career out of it because it feels good. But there's a lot more to it than that. So I'm curious because you do all kinds of stuff, Don. You're like me, a busybody. And then this idea came up, and look at it now. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and it's funny that you put it like that, because when I started to get to know Matt better, and I tasted the quality of the beer he was making, and, you know, tasted the garbage that I was making at that time, I kept coming back to Matt. And even my wife, she would say, Matt, you really need to open a microbrewery.
Yeah.
And Matt was adamant, like, no, because it's my hobby, it's my fun space, it's my safe space. When you make it a business, then it's no longer my fun zone. And that was really, you know, a kind of a 2 or 3 year period. And then I think once we ended up adding in, you know, brewers who had industrial experience and had recipes and formulas and big output, you know, history, then I think, you know, at least for Matt, I'm going to speculate that kind of eased a little bit of your hesitations.
Yeah, 100%. I always liked the idea. I always liked the idea of opening, and pretty much nailed it on the head. And you were kind of the driving force of, hey, we should actually make this happen. And yeah.
Having known you for so long, we've had conversations over and over about never turning this into a career. I mean, I think there's almost like this predictable bell curve of homebrewers who want to start a brewery, and then they realize how big of a pain in the ass it's going to be, how hard it's going to be to make money doing it from a homebrew startup set, and then you accept that it's just a hobby. I don't want to make it a thing. But for you, having the proper people in place, it sounds like, is what really kind of motivated you to say yes finally.
It made me feel a lot more confident.
Yeah, safer.
Sure. Yeah, safer.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're putting yourself out there. This is a big leap, right? You're putting a lot of money into a facility. You're putting a lot of money into your team of people, And you've got to have that comfort level where I'm not absorbing all of it on my own. I have folks involved in this that can each, bear a certain, large, significant portion of the burden on their shoulders. And as a group, we get everything done and we get it done right. And I think once you have all those people identified, then it's just following a process and a business plan to actually get where you're going. But I think putting the team together is probably the hardest thing to do.
Oh my gosh. Which brings us to Brad. Tell us how you got involved. And again, little background on us. Matt and I had been friends for a little bit. And I remember, I believe it was Sean Wood, who's been on the show to talk about House of Pendragon Sour program, had said, hey, we got this new guy serving beer at Pendragon, or this guy brewing a bag batch and you didn't happen to show up. He's telling me this. And it happened to be Brad, and you kind of became a part of our little local brewing group.
Yeah, and that was probably the best thing that happened. I started homebrewing back in 2013 and got together with just a group of really knowledgeable and good guys. Matt being one of them, Marshall, Tommy and Sean, both from House of Pendragon, Aaron. Just a good group of really good people that knew what they were doing. And so I was the new guy on the block, and they kind of showed me the ropes and helped me work out kinks. And
we don't need to hear about your kinks, Brad.
Yeah. So 2013, I started homebrewing, and then shortly after that, I got a job at House of Pendragon, just serving at the bar, and then worked my way up from there. And about 2015, I started actually working out at the brewery. Wasn't brewing right away, but I was washing kegs and just doing busy work, cleaning things, whatever I could there to get hours. Eventually, Tommy grew and got his 15-barrel system. So I started taking over the 3-barrel system, and we did a couple experiments with Marshall. Got to do some fun stuff, and then worked my way up to that 15-barrel system. And then from there, I moved on to another local brewery and got my feet wet there and got to kind of do my own recipes and do what I wanted to. And was there for a couple years, and then now we're on to this. So.
And I feel like in that time from the starting at Pendragon and your experience and this is just as a local guy in the beer scene, that there was this growth. Like did you enter homebrewing thinking that you wanted to make brewing a career, or what?
No, never. No. I just started because the beer I was buying was way too expensive for me. So I can make this for cheaper.
Yeah, right. Then you learned, no, I can't. Right.
Yeah. Then it just became a never-ending hobby.
Yeah. Well, now you're doing it on a massive scale.
Yeah.
But you again, rather than just going out and starting a nano brewery and doing this thing because you like brewing, you did grunt work. I mean, you went in.
Absolutely.
You weren't brewing any of the bigger batches at Pendragon, if I recall, right? You were doing some of the experimental stuff, or
so towards the end of when I was there, probably the last year or so, I was brewing on the big system. Me and Tommy would swap off. But yeah, a lot of it was on that small 3-barrel system where we were doing brew in a bag for a while, and we just had a lot of fun on there doing some weird things.
Yeah. Remember that when you guys were doing the brew in a bag on a 3-barrel and you had to like forklift the bag out of it or whatever?
Yeah, it was. It was fun. It was definitely interesting, but it got us by, and we were able to double batch because the demand was so high then, and we just weren't able to pump out that beer on that 3-barrel system. So we got to do a lot of fun ideas, and the brew in the bag, that was crazy. 3.5-barrel batches of brew in a bag. It was a big bag.
Crazy. I feel like though that you've made a name for yourself. You didn't just stick to doing what Tommy was good at. You kind of branched out and kind of started doing your own creative thing, and I feel like that was probably a part of what I'm assuming here. Okay, that's what the Crow and Wolf idea when you started thinking we got to get Brad on board.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I mean, and selfishly, I had the same experience, right? I'm telling my wife, years ago, like, oh, I need to buy all this equipment because it's cheaper for me to make my own beer than to buy beer prepackaged, and that was just a huge lie. But I appreciate her tolerance and sticking with us in that respect. But yeah, it really was. I mean, you see what Brad's developed on his own. You see what Spencer's developed on his own, and you look at that, and it's like the chocolate and the peanut butter, right? You put the two together, and you have a large scale offering that I think really will appeal to the masses.
So Spencer, how did you get involved in this? You've got some history in the Fresno brewing scene as well.
So I started off brewing at Tioga Sequoia, I think around 2015, 2016. And I went out to drink with one of the other brewers there one night at Pendragon, and I ran into Brad, and I was introduced to him there. And turns out we had the same favorite color.
Like long walks on the beach.
Purple for the record, yes. And we became fast friends, and we've been just brewing together for years ever since then. I, too, worked at the other local brewery that he worked at, and we got our first real test run of what it would be like to develop our own recipes together, and it was super successful.
Yeah.
And then we were approached by, we got to meet Don, and we were approached by him, and then one thing led to another, and here we are.
So one thing led to another. Here we are. We've had the opportunity now. Are we saying that Crow and Wolf is officially open? I know that it kind of halfway is maybe right now.
Yeah, it's I'll say quasi open.
Yeah.
Obviously, COVID construction delays kind of hit us a little bit.
Yeah.
So we have the warehouse, the brew house is all up, open, functioning, up, running. We're making great beer. Tap room's a couple of weeks out, and then everything will be fully open at that point.
So almost open, quasi open.
Almost.
We've had the opportunity as friends, of course, to sit and drink beer off the tanks, and now you've got some in kegs that you're serving, and it's phenomenal. I mean, there's no denying that. We all trusted that Spencer and Brad were gonna. I mean, it's mostly Spencer, I'm sure, but yeah. but we've had the opportunity. We're drinking some now. What are we? If you want to tell us about the beer we're drinking, real quick now, this is going to be a mainstay, right?
This one,
I'd like it to be.
Yeah,
It's good.
It
Yeah.
depends on the weather. This is our stout. It was our first batch that we did on the system. We kind of wanted to play around with that instead of doing a core beer, just because the ABV kind of fluctuated. We didn't know what efficiency we were going to get. We figured a stout would be a good way to go. So this one, it has a little bit of lactose in it. It has some coffee. Has some vanilla in it too. It comes in at 6%. A little bit of smoked malt. I'm really happy with how this one turned out.
It's so good. I know. Thank you for bringing beers for us to drink. I rarely drink on the show, actually. Usually it's like 8:30 when I'm recording. That's why.
And that's not acceptable.
Yeah, it feels wrong. I know, but at least I get a show out. Don, tell us a little bit about what you clearly are going big with this thing. I've known a lot of people who go pro, and you guys are the only ones that I'm close to who have done it this way, which is huge. What was the impetus behind planning to do it that way, and what was your thought process in choosing that?
Yeah, no, totally great question. So about 2 years ago, we started formally looking at what it would be to create a production scale brewery in our area, location, size of system, things like that. And it was right around that time we went to the California Craft Brewer Summit. And at that summit, I hit most of kind of the financial, the business side of the programs there. And it became apparent to me in the second day that we're in kind of a beer void. We're in a ginormous area. Fresno County and surrounding areas are 1+ million people. And at the time, I think we had 9 breweries, which if you look at other cities with the same, similar populations, they're significantly larger. And when you look at California, you break down the number of counties in California, we were dead last for beer being produced in the county per capita. And so right away, we knew there was an economic opportunity there. And so then it was, okay, now you have to put together a budget, a business plan, location. I mean, to me, venue was probably the second most important thing after securing, really good brewers. And so driving to a venue that is accessible to the public, and in this area, that's not the easiest thing to do. We're very spread out.
Yeah.
So that was really kind of what steered me that direction, was seeing the void of, really, in my opinion, awesome craft beer population in our area, which is easily able to support it based on the number of people that live here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that, it sounds to me like that realization, you said, well, the opportunity is so big, we need to match that opportunity, proverbially speaking, the size of that opportunity with the size of what we're going to do here.
Yeah, absolutely. Because most of the guys around us that make beer and sell it, commercially, they're on smaller systems. And I don't know if it's because that's what they could afford or if that's what they thought the public would demand. But, again, looking at supply and demand in our area, we felt like there was more than ample opportunity to get into a larger scale system, which is what drove us into the platform we have now. So yeah, just kind of looking at what we felt like we could create in this space, knowing that we had kind of an underserved situation going on.
So from the start of the idea, the spark, to the raging fire that it is today, what was your time? How long was that?
Forever.
So yeah,
Forever.
It's been like the longest 10 years last year.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just talking to our city folks yesterday about this. I looked at this as an 18-month situation, right? When we first formally started this, formed the partnership, and actually started writing checks. We're going to be just at 2 years. But keep in mind that we started really, pulling loan money and putting the real guts to it when COVID started. So realistically, we would
God.
have easily have been on my expected time frame. And I have to say that we're lucky that we've only been delayed, about 6 months, because what I'm hearing from other folks in other communities is that their start into a similar sized business would be anywhere from 2 to 3 years. So my 18-month-ish, plan was very aggressive, but I think we could have met that if we hadn't been in the COVID situations.
Yeah, the COVID situation was weird, threw a wrench in things. And I remember talking to you and Brad and asking like, well, what's this going to do? This is the worst thing that could possibly happen. And there was nothing but confidence. I mean, you guys knew that it was going to work.
Yeah, we knew it was going to work. And it was funny because when you talk to people that started breweries, typically their struggles are with, maybe licensing and permitting and stuff like that. We did not have that experience at all. And I think that was probably COVID related. There were very few establishments opening during COVID, which meant our inspectors were that much more accessible. But what hit us was people couldn't get concrete. We couldn't get steel. We couldn't get, items that we needed to actually construct the facility. And so while we gained time on one end, we sacrificed time on the other end. And that's really what drove it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We're talking, I know it felt like 10 years and a year, but you're talking almost 2 years at this point. Is that what we're saying? Yeah, about 2 years. I think that's pretty typical for a kind of a business to get up off the ground anyways. Maybe, I don't know.
It could be. I think for the brewing industry, it's probably complicated by, again, licensing and permitting, which other businesses probably don't have to go through to that extent. So when you peel that back, it could be about a 2-year project for most other folks. And I feel, like I said, I feel lucky that we kept it, what's going to be at a 2-year mark. So,
and you never, just to be clear, you guys never considered starting smaller and then building up. This was, was there ever any talk of that? I've been curious about that one on the side.
Well, we accidentally upsized our system. We were seeking out like a 15. And we ended up with a 20.
That's
just
right.
By a matter of fact, but
I still say 15 because of all the talk about 15, but yeah, it's a 20 barrel
system.
Yeah. God.
With the original business plan was written for like a 7 barrel, and we just figured out that wasn't going to make a whole lot of sense. Like at 7 barrels, you're not producing the kind of volume that we wanted to do to get the crowd we want to get.
And we've seen a lot of other breweries, that start small, whatever size it is, whether they're starting nano or they're starting 3 or 5 or 7. And when, the beer's there and people like it, then you see them just upgrade their system, a year later, 2 years later. And we wanted to make sure whatever system we got was going to last for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a rad system. Man, it's cool.
It has got all the bells and whistles.
It really is cool. Yeah,
it's pretty damn sexy.
Yeah, we were looking for, like Spencer said, we were looking for a smaller size system, and part of that was because I think we were a little bit cautious, right? We knew folks that had started breweries, maybe they didn't do so well, and then like Brad said, we had other folks that started on a 2, and then they went to a 3, and then went to a 5, and then to a 7, and
same guy.
The investment cost in that equipment is just, you're kind of wasting that. And so we had to decide if we were going to put up or shut up, and we decided to put up, and that's why we went with what we set up today.
It's so pretty.
It is pretty.
And it has to stay there a while because it's essentially bolted to the ground in a lot of places.
Yeah,
we're not moving it.
Yeah, it's more than semi-permanent. We'll put it that way. Okay, so I once heard someone say that in order to start a brewery that achieves success sooner than later, you need to assume a minimum startup cost of $1 million. Now, I know money is kind of a taboo subject to talk about in our culture, and I feel like because of that, a lot of people out there who are dreaming of making brewing a profession really have no idea what to expect. We all, as homebrewers, know that it's not cheap to homebrew. I've got a rig out there that costs $1,200, but that's cheap to a professional brewer. If you guys are okay with it, Don, I know this is probably mostly your domain here. You too, Matt. Perhaps we can get into the nitty gritty and break down some of the expenses of starting a brewery like Crow and Wolf and the way that you guys have done it.
Yeah, and you're right. Money is typically a taboo subject. I think for the purpose of this podcast, we want other folks to feel confident in what they're doing and to take the same leap that we took. So, in all honesty, we'll be between 1.5 and 2 million in total.
1.5 and 2 million in total. Keep that in your mind because I feel like people are like, no, I got 10 grand in the bank. We can make this work.
No. Not happening.
No.
Yeah.
So carry on, Don. I did not mean to cut you off. You just brushed right by 1.5 to $2 million. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. The thing I think that if I could go back and do it again, I would have put a little bit more contingency money out because we had so many cost overruns on certain items, and that was not something we anticipated. I mean, we had contingency money set aside. I would say we probably could have upped that by 20 to 25%, but in reality, it's going to be just underneath $2 million. Total.
And we're talking big go home or go big kind of thing.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
My father-in-law came one day and he hadn't been to the brewery yet, and he's like, his expectation before coming was like, obviously he was blown away when he got there. He was like, Matt, this is not small.
No.
And I was like, yeah, what did you expect? Like, yeah. So,
and that cost breakdown, I'm not trying to dumb down our audience. I know, in fact, I think most of the smartest people I know are homebrewers. That's actually most of who I know these days, but they're not dumb, you know? And so I don't want anyone to feel offended out there, but I feel like I've been doing this for a long time, and as we've been talking over the last couple of years and me hearing the kind of the inside scoop about where not just money but energy and what your focus is going, it's kind of like, God, I didn't even consider that, let's break some of the bigger parts of it down. Let's talk about the system. Let's talk about the space and how you chose to do that and some of the considerations that go into that.
Yeah, no, totally. The system we picked up is a Deutsche Beverage 20-barrel system. It's I guess they technically call it semi-automated. I would say it's probably 85 to 90% automated. It does a lot of what we want to do. It keeps the guys from having to jump up and down the deck all day long to do certain things. And so a lot of it's push button technology. It interfaces off the iPads. We can fire the boiler from home at 4 o'clock in the morning. There's all these little things in it that I know were pain points for them in their previous experiences. So were we looking to get an automated brew house? Absolutely not. Was this a little bit over budget? Maybe, but it was worth it because it saved the time and energy of the brew team in doing so. And so that was an expense I think that we easily justified. If you looked at, that is probably the biggest line item expense that we had. The second biggest would be the improvements in the structure of the building.
I feel like that's a big one, right? Because you have to retrofit any space that you want to build a brewery in specifically for a brewery, and that is no easy task.
Yeah, we had a building owner that was very sympathetic to our cause, and as soon as we signed our lease with him, I said we're going to have to cut the floors up, and he didn't even hesitate. So that was the first thing we did.
Nice.
Yeah,
His
these were brand new floors too. Like they had just been poured.
Yep. Concrete was still drying, and we had the crew come in, and they ground up a lot of it, sloped and trench drains in, and that's when we kind of started turning it into a physical brew premises.
And you think about all that goes into doing that retrofit. I mean, again, it's just money on top of my eyes are just going cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. It's just a lot of dough that goes into that and planning and making sure that it's done right.
The floors, it wasn't just cutting and sloping them, putting drains in. It was also the floor coating so that we made sure that this floor lasted.
And the slope of the floor and the custom concrete work done for that and the drainage and actually the temperature ratings of the drains, the temperature ratings of the pipes below the drains. There's so much involved that all the hats we had to put on this whole operation were insane.
And then you finally, about a month and a half ago, got to brew your first batch. And this has been 2 years in coming. And, I was lucky enough to kind of be there for different parts of that and all that and to witness it. I imagine the feeling of knocking this first stout out and having it in the tank and fermenting was pretty, I don't know, overwhelming.
Yeah. No, it was a great feeling. That first brew day it was nice to be up there brewing. I don't know about Spencer, but I could say I was cautiously nervous that day. There was a lot of new buttons and technology that we hadn't really got to work out.
Totally.
But at the end of the day, I was really happy with how things went and really happy with how the beer came out.
We've been looking forward to doing that for the better part of a year now. So a little fun story. This guy over here bought the most expensive steak he can get his hands on, ate like a king that night. Not only did we have a great brew day, he had a fantastic meal, and everybody's been loving the product thus far. So now it's super, super real, super totally worth it.
It's real. And we'll talk. I want to go over your guys' kind of staple beers here in a minute because they are phenomenal. Brad's the type of guy, if I may, who could be as anxious as hell and And you would never guess it. You just, yeah, but then he buys a big steak. You're like, I knew it, man. I knew you were anxious. So yeah, you guys, it cost a lot of money. It takes a lot of work to do it. We have a bunch of questions. We actually put out, when we were planning to do this episode last year, we put out a call for questions on Facebook. I was able to dig up all those questions. So we'll probably address some stuff in this talk. In the next segment, we're just going to go through and answer questions, drink some more beer, have a good time with that. But is there anything else you feel like it's important for our listeners to know from the brewing side, Brad and Spencer, from the ownership, presidential side, Don and Matt? Because we're going to get to those questions. People have asked you everything. I promise you that. But is there anything that you feel like that you've learned in the process of building what is a big brewery from the ground up?
Yeah, I think the best advice I can give folks, and probably the biggest thing we learned on, was if you believe in yourself and you believe in your team, do it. Don't hesitate, because there will be a demand for it if what you do turns out to be what you're expecting. If you make great beer, people will come drink it, and that's our philosophy.
I'm going to say this, that I feel like where, it's sad, and we hear about these breweries that fail. And unfortunately with COVID, the reasons for that are obvious. It's not because of bad beer or whatever. But I feel like where a lot of, home brewers who want to go pro, what they miss, I don't want to sound like I'm patronizing anybody, is the need for a team, is the need for a group of people. I learned, even with Brewlosophy alone, I learned that there was no way we could do what we do if I didn't have not only a team of people who share a vision, but who have different personalities and whose capacities are better in one area than mine are, right?
So when it came to building this team, Brad and I can do all the beers all day long.
Right.
But we're basically just monkeys with wrenches. We had to have smarter people than us to run the business side of things. Like I look at tax papers and permits and stuff, and I'm immediately want. And we found some guys with way bigger brains who were able to, fill that gap for us.
Yeah, I never had any intentions to start a brew because I didn't want to deal with the business side. So when this came up, it just worked out perfectly. So I can brew, and you guys are going to do all the business stuff. And I've learned a lot seeing what they're doing and how much effort, and it's easily 50% brewing and 50% all that business work. So if you're going into this on your own and you're not, business savvy, I would say find some partners that are and that share that same passion as you.
Well, and speaking of partners, you guys aren't the only owners. You've got a couple other guys who also contribute incredibly important roles.
Yeah, certainly. So our partnership is a total of 7. We've got, and that's one of the first things I did. I inventoried who was interested in this project and what they brought to the table from a skill and effort perspective. And so knowing, obviously, like you said, you can't carry something like this on your own shoulders. It's literally impossible. Yeah. Bringing this team together and figuring out strengths and weaknesses. And admittedly, we had to adjust that a couple of times, but we hit this cadence where everybody kind of had their own expertise or area of expertise. Yeah. And so when it came up to that particular item, it was obviously assumed by that particular person. And so, Mike Jangosian's our operations guy, and he's just incredibly talented at managing and project and kind of overall scope and flow and workflow. And Adam Grzinski is our finance guy, and again, he's a CPA, so he
knows money.
He knows how to track the money in and out, and he knows when people are and are not paying their invoices, and so we all kind of carry our own particular burden in the entire scheme of things, but that's what makes us so good at this project, and I think that's what makes us unique.
Yeah. I feel like it is unique. Again, I talk to a lot of people who have dabbled in going pro, and they try and they back out and they go back to home. This is such a different monster. That's why I really wanted to have you guys on the show, because I know there are people out there who have contacts, who are home brewers, just like Matt and I were, or Brad and I were, or spent, all of us homebrewed for some time, who have those contacts, who may be interested in doing something like this and doing it right. Confidence, courage. I mean, especially for the people putting the money in it, you got to have confidence and courage. Well,
capital's a big one.
My God, I know. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing to see. Have anyone here ever seen the movie Overboard with Kurt Russell?
Yep.
And Goldie Hawn? I love that movie. And there's this part, his dream is to open up a mini golf place, like a family owned mini golf place. I was telling my wife the other day, like every time I go to Kronwolf and they're playing Bob Seger in the background when they open up the mini golf place, it just feels like a family in there. And that's the thing is everybody, your guys' whole thing, the whole group is so cool. Nobody's pretentious. It's not that like we're the cool pro brewer guys now.
That's totally a family, man. Like I love being up on the brew deck and seeing his kids and Matt's kids and Adam's kids and Don's kids and my kids are all just running around the brewery playing hide and seek, denting our cans and all that cool stuff. But like, it's totally
you break it, you buy it, right?
Yeah, it's totally a family operation. It's the first time I've been employed somewhere, or not employed, first job that I've been able to do with my family around.
Yeah,
like before, it's just always been faux pas to have your family.
Yeah. And I mean, just from my perspective, how many times have I brought my kids over there to hang out? And,
Absolutely.
And
totally.
I mean, Olive is over here watching us record because she knows all you guys. My 7-year-old, are we going to Crow and Wolf today? Are they going to brew today?
Crow and Wolf, a family-friendly company.
There you go. Yeah. Well, it does say that on the website, that it's a family-friendly brewing establishment.
That was one of the first things we committed to. We're a family-friendly establishment that's easily accessible, bike, running, walking, car. That was tied to the location. That location that we got was absolutely key.
Yeah.
And when we went to the city the first time and had that initial sit down, like, here's what we want to do. It's kind of a little earthquake moment. And I said, we want this to be a family-friendly establishment where people come and sit and hang out for an afternoon, not just 1 or 2 pints.
Yeah.
Come and get comfortable. Get to know your neighbors. Kind of the backyard or the back porch feel is what we built our tap room around. And I think that's going to make a big, big difference when you look at the longevity of our customer base. I really think it's going to help drive that tackiness to keep coming back to our facility.
I don't see how people are going to resist it. I try not to do this too often, but I'm an observer. It's what drove me into becoming a psychologist. I love to watch that. I love marketing. That was my second passion. I don't see how people will be able to say no because of how comfortable it is, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I know I'm buttering your guys' buns. I don't mean to do that. Before we break to our first commercial break here, perhaps we could talk about your staple beers, what people might be able to expect. Tell us about some of your core beers.
Right now we have 4 over here. We have Odyssey, which is the stout we spoke about earlier. We have Maya, which is our Helles lager. And we wanted to do a Helles lager instead of your typical light offering like a blonde or a cream or any of those other light offerings because it's better.
Yeah. Who doesn't love a good Helles?
It's just better. It's another palette in that color, but it's approachable by anybody. It's not supposed to be this crazy aggressive beer. It's a beer flavored beer for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure in our lager too that we did everything we could to make it as good as possible. So we used Mecca grade malt in this, and I think we're both really happy with how it came out.
It's got the beer flavored beer.
Yeah, those Mecca grade malts, boy.
Mecca grade malt, man, it's good.
So there's a story behind you loving Mecca too, because I made like a Kolsch.
I love Mecca.
Yeah, we do too. Talking to your mic, Brad.
I love Mecca.
Yeah, no,
I love Lamp.
But and actually, more broadly speaking, that's another unique thing. You look at a lot of breweries, and you got to go with the lowest cost beer that tastes good enough to sell, so that you can balance that profit, right? You need to make money on it. And you guys are again, going big or going home. You want to do exactly what you love because you think that's going to relate to the people drinking it. And you choose to spend more money on craft malts. And right now, I mean, I think just yesterday, they did like the craft malt awards in Colorado or something. That you got Root Shoot, you've got Sugar Creek Malting Company, all of these smaller craft maltsters that are blowing up right now. Yeah. For you guys to choose something like Mecca grade I think it's awesome. And that beer is phenomenal.
Thank you.
It's phenomenal. But we're drinking it right now. It's really good. What are some of your other core beers that you're going to kind of hit the market with once you guys open up?
So another one that we're going to open up with is Signal Fire, which is our pale ale. To me, the pale ale is the perfect beer. It should be what everyone drinks during a nice hot day next to the pool, or a lawnmower beer. I mean, a nice lager is good too, but the pale ale is my favorite style of beer. So we wanted to make sure that we found a way to keep people interested, because a lot of times people hear pale ale and think, oh, the 90s.
Yeah.
Sierra Nevada, shout out.
Yeah, shout out. We love
them. For the record, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is my bar for a beer.
It's a lot of our bar, I think.
Yeah. So with Signal Fire, we found a way to sort of bridge the gap between what people's perceptions of the old pale ale versus what people want these days. It's balanced but assertively hoppy.
Yeah.
It's got tons of flavor, but it's not hard to drink. it goes down almost too easy.
It's so good. It is so good. And I want to, this, I wasn't planning on bringing this up because we're talking about pale ale. We know that the popular thing right now and what a lot of people in the industry, this general industry, are talking about is the fact that hazy IPA, you know, hazy is king right now. It could taste like junk. And here it goes. Ooh. You get to lick your mic now, bud. But haze is king, but you guys aren't necessarily gonna do the everything is hazy just because it'll sell. You want to do some classic stuff that you really like with your modern spin on it as well, and really go for. This is my understanding. You can tell me I'm wrong if I'm wrong, but really go for just making good beers that you think people are gonna like, regardless of how in this day and age they look necessarily.
Well, I think, and I'll. Sorry to jump in, but I think what we're looking at is, and we said this right up front, we're going to have to make beers that we like to drink as you know, kind of aficionados, connoisseurs of the craft beverage industry. And we're going to have to make beers that we know that the public is going to want. And so you kind of balance that out. We're going to have the ultra light, blonde, lager-ish types of beers. And then we're going to have the really technical, complex, you know, variety of German lagers. So kind of keeping, and that's why when we set the tap room up, we set it up to have 22 on, so that we could have kind of that variety of, you know, ultra consumable public beers. But if you're a craft beer guy and you still really want to dig into those different flavor profiles, we'll have those there as well.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of led us to make that such a broad offering.
I think I think that's easier for somebody in your position, in your guys' position, because I mean, how many faucets are you going to have?
22.
Yeah, exactly. So you can have half of your tap offerings, all hazy stuff, and still have half for the people like me who just want to drink normal beer.
And we also want to basically serve every crowd we can possibly get, and that includes NA options too. You know,
absolutely,
cream ale or actual like soda cream ale and root beer and cold pressed coffee and.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that I've heard you guys tossing around over the last 6 months or so. Exactly. You know, we just want people to come in and have a good time. And that's a weird thing. I feel like that's the way a lot of breweries are kind of headed. The direction they're headed in is we want to make it welcoming to everybody. My wife is excited because you're going to do seltzer. You've talked about doing cider. You know, all of that stuff is all fair game. And it's funny because Brad is the one who got me into making cider. Yep. I just recalled that. Yeah. And you do
and
it
gelatin.
well. And this is Brad, the gelatin guy. That's right. Yeah, you've changed my world, Brad, on so many levels. Well, we've got to give some love to our sponsors here. We're going to refill our beer glasses. When we're back from this break, Don, Brad, Matt, Spencer, we're going to be answering some questions submitted by listeners. Have you ever thought about adding a port to your kettle but held off because you didn't feel like drilling into your gear or sending it off to have someone else do it? From the makers of the world's fastest counterflow chiller, the exGEERitor, comes the Hangover, the easiest way to add extra ports to your kettle as well as countless other options. Mount a faucet to your keg for easy portable pouring. Set up the perfect whirlpool arm. Hold a heating element in place. All of this and so much more without permanently modifying your gear. Manufactured right here in the United States, the Hangover offers brewers too many convenient solutions to list here. So head over to exGEERitor.com today to see what the Hangover can do for you. As every brewer knows, the best beer requires the best hops, which Yakima Valley Hops provides fresh from the source to brewers around the world, carrying everything from classics like Cascade to modern favorites like Galaxy and Mosaic, as well as other ingredients and gear. Yakima Valley Hops has it all. And don't forget to check out their new podcast, The Late Edition, where the YVH crew goes into depth on our favorite plant with industry experts. Head over to YakimaValleyHops.com now to see all they have to offer and subscribe to The Late Edition wherever it is you listen to podcasts. Craftmaster Growlers takes traveling with and sharing beer to a new level. Made from heavy-duty stainless steel, Craftmaster Growlers are double-wall insulated and can keep beer cold for up to 8 hours. Unlike typical growlers, Craftmaster Growlers come with a swiveling tap and fully integrated CO2 regulator cap, allowing beer to stay fresh for 2 weeks or more. The square design takes up less space and will fit in most refrigerator doors, and every Craftmaster Growler comes with a 1-year warranty. There are 64 and 128-ounce versions available over at craftmastergrowlers.com. The brew in a bag method has blown up over the last few years, and in that time, it's become very clear that not all bags are created equal. For the best BIAB experience, you have got to go with the Brew Bag. Made from high-quality, food-safe polyester, the Brew Bag is available in both 210 micron for standard brew in a bag, as well as 400 micron, which works beautifully for all-in-one recirculating systems. I've been a Brew Bag user for years and wouldn't brew without it. Head over to brewinabag.com to get the fabric filter that works for you, and use promo code TBP17 at checkout to receive a discount. Again, that's brewinabag.com. So way back when we first started planning to do this episode, we asked our Facebook followers to submit questions that they have for the Crone Wolf crew, and we're going to get some of those now. And this is not something that I've curated. I'm just going to go through and ask them. The first question comes from Kevin McLean. Why on earth would you go pro now? Now, mind you, this was, 6 months ago or so? Why on earth would you go pro now? Saturated market about the collapse. And I just would like to say that got a couple laughy faces, a couple hearts, and a couple thumbs ups.
Well, we've already been pro for quite a while, half a decade. So, yeah, next.
Yeah, but
I feel like there's a good response to that.
Don't forget in that question. So you said Kevin's question was 6 months ago, right?
It was about 6 months ago, yeah.
Right. So alcohol sales, particularly.
Oh my God, it was a year ago. It was February 23rd of 2020 that we asked this.
Right. So what happened to craft beer sales a year ago? It skyrocketed. COVID drove people into craft beer markets. And really, the folks that struggled were the folks that weren't ready for that. And what I mean by is if you didn't have a crowler, if you couldn't crowler, if you couldn't can, then you were stuck because your only revenue was people coming and buying your beer on site or selling it in bars, which were no longer in existence. But
Right.
for the folks that were well-rounded and well-prepared, their revenues went way up, and we saw that in a number of locations.
Oh yeah, but I feel like you addressed it in the last segment when you said that in your research, which a lot of people don't do, market research, the ratio of brewery to population in the Fresno Clovis area, the Central Valley in general, wasn't the same as it is in a lot of places. So yes, it's a fair argument that there's market saturation in craft beer overall, but that's not the case here. And then you say, well, we're bringing in something modern, something new. We've got Brad and Spencer who do weird shit with beer. I'm going to be honest, and I even like it. And so you got that. And then also, but we're open to making a Hellas for the folks who just want to come in and drink a Bud Light, you know?
Yeah, and I was halfway joking my first answer, but we did, pivot our game plan. When all this went down and we saw, okay, the lockdowns are going to be more than 2 weeks. We didn't have a canning line in our original business plan, but we pivoted, and our canning line should be here in the next 2 weeks because we knew in order to succeed, if this goes on, we have to have beer in cans.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's 100%, right? And you have to have that distribution network set up and know what you're going to do, have the beer to fill those cans, all that stuff. So I think that was a good answer. I think that was a good. I get he was being trying to be a little bit funny and cheeky. So
little cheeky.
Next question comes from Tommy Kiefer. He says, "What would the time frame be to recoup the initial investment, and what is the total cost?" I think $1.5 to $2 million we said is total.
Correct.
So time frame to recoup that investment. What do you think?
Our time frame to recoup is going to be somewhere right under the 4-year mark, which is fine. That's kind of what we anticipated. So
that is a very common response, actually, because I've asked a few people, regardless of size, right? Because it's kind of a function of how much you can produce is how much money you're going to make on that front. So about 4 years, I think, is pretty decent. Decent time frame. Steve Powell says, "If going pro, are you actually going to get professional training?"
No.
Yes, and I would recommend anybody that even wants to start a brewery or become a brewer, get some training. And even if it's you're not brewing from day one, you're washing kegs, learn the ins and out. Chemicals are completely different, the equipment's completely different. There's a lot to learn, and if you can do it on somebody else's dime,
hell yeah.
better.
That was my thing. If you can get somebody else, even if that professional training is professional experience, which arguably, by the way, in almost any profession, experience is more valuable than sitting through 5 lectures a day. Get that experience before you go and do something like this so that you can hit the ground running.
Also, you have to do the job to understand the job. It's not easy. It's a labor-intensive job. You work with hot, dangerous chemicals, steam pipes. Sometimes some guys have fire in their brewery. Like, it's not just a weekend brewing with your homies over a 5-gallon batch. It's an actual whole job.
Yeah. All right. Stephen Kearney says, how was going through the process of obtaining proper financing? Did you guys do financing at all? Or?
We did. We were owner financed to a portion, and we also pulled a building finance piece. And that was, again, we did that portion during COVID. And so we did a little bit of SBA money for that. And that process was, and I will say, that was the most frustrating thing we had to go through.
Thanks, Adam.
Yes, thank you, Adam, very much.
Yeah,
going through the small business loan process, if it's federally funded, is difficult because they want to see so much. And then the COVID questions came up. Well, even if we lend you this money, then how is it going to be applied? How do you expect your business plan to change? So it wasn't just submitting the stuff initially; it was the constant revising of what they were asking of us to go through that process. And the vetting process. If you're going to get SBA, funding in any capacity, they're going to background you, which means they're going to background your partner, which means anything that you have is either going to disqualify you, or at least at a minimum, you're going to have to justify, something that was, kind of lingering in the closet. But that being said, if you're partnered with a good SBA source, those funds are transferred through agencies that are licensed by the federal government to lend that money. If you're partnered with somebody that knows what they're doing and they're good, they can help you march through that fairly quickly. And so I would say, while it was also the most frustrating part of what we did, when we got to the end of that, that was probably one of the most rewarding spots, is when we looked and we were finally done. And the guy from the loan company called and said, "You guys are good. Let's do this." And that was really an awesome moment.
I'm with Brad. I would not want to deal with that in the slightest. No. I just would want to make and drink beer. Yep. See, I would suck as a pro brewer. Anyways, that's why I don't do it. Thanks for the question, Stephen. That was an interesting one. Alessandro Vivas says, oh, this is interesting because it has to do more with the brewing side of things. Yeast attenuation described by manufacturers versus fast fermentation test. So are you guys doing fast ferm tests?
We've done forced fermentations in the past,
yeah,
where you want to keep the wort as warm as you can without killing the yeast. I would say most manufacturers are pretty close to what they advertise.
Okay.
Yeah, we keep an Excel sheet where we just kind of track each batch, which generation of yeast it is, and then look at that attenuation and just try and find trends.
Interesting. As a home brewer, I believe Matt's done a few forced fermentation tests as well. I've done a few, just out of curiosity. We had somebody wrote in with a comment of some feedback a couple weeks ago on an episode, saying that they do what is basically a forced fermentation test just to determine where their FG should be, so that when they check the full batch of beer, they know if it's done or not.
Yeah, a lot of guys do that in the big scale.
Yeah.
Throw it in an Nalgene and keep it in a sous vide for a couple of days. They're good.
Yeah. It helps you turn around as fast as possible. Because on our scale, we want to move beer as fast as we can. That's the best way to make money.
That's the business side
That's
of
the
it.
business.
Right,
we could sit it in a tank for like 6-7 months and it'd be wonderful. But if it was done 5 months ago, that's 5 months of money left on the table.
That's right.
So let's get it done.
I see that side of it big time as well. I feel like you can't just go into it if you're passionate about making really good beer. That sounds terrible, but I feel like it's the kind of the God's honest truth type of thing.
So Spencer, you're saying we shouldn't hide kegs in the walls or anything for a couple years?
Yeah, you shouldn't move and have kegs move with you.
Yeah. All right, next question is kind of along those lines as well. Anson Wood says, do you feel obligated to produce ultra hazy, super hoppy, overly fruited lactose juice smoothies?
Yes.
Yes.
Until you guys stop buying the things that we want to make, then no, we have to make those.
But here's the thing. I'm sorry for jumping in here. You guys do it good. I've had these things where they leave grit in your teeth. They leave like gross pulpy stuff in your mouth, and that's not what your guys' taste like. I don't know what you're doing different, except for maybe that you kind of cut your teeth when this whole thing started to grow, so you have more experience. Maybe, I don't know.
It's the love.
Yeah, they're not our favorite styles, but there's people out there that want to drink them and want to buy them. So, while they might not be what we drink on a Saturday afternoon, we're gonna do the best we can to make that beer as good as possible.
Yeah.
Well, and Marshall, it's also kind of funny because people walk into the brewery and they're kind of checking out what we're doing and they're seeing what we're making. And then invariably we have a yellow jacket laying around somewhere or a case of Natty Light. And they laugh because brewers ultimately get tired of drinking what they make over and over again. And you're going to go back to what you kind of have had in the past. And, we were joking about years ago, like, Weinhardt's, that's what was like my first beer, and how that totally changed everything. So
we were building your guys' cold room 2 months ago, and a bunch of people from the Pendragon crew came over, a couple of Brewlosophy guys. Paul was there with me. the entire Crone Wolf crew. And, you know, there's a big space. It's not like we were all trying to be cool. And we were drinking Miller Lite the entire time.
I think we had like 3 30-packs there that day.
Yeah, 3
And I think
30
they
packs of Miller
all
Lite.
got drank.
Oh, and I literally did backflips. Our friend Ronnie brought us a case of hams, and we literally we were stunned. He walked in the door with a case of hams, and we couldn't believe it, and then it was gone.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be there when he brought that and got a couple cans. That is a good beer. I don't care who you are. That was a good beer.
It takes a lot of domestic lagers to make craft beer.
Yeah, I wish we had like a count, like a tally mark on the amount of just macro beers that it went through to get this place up and running, because it was a lot of long days.
So as people who are in the commercial industry, this is something, all of the people that I know, all the folks that I've talked to who are in the commercial industry do not have the hate of big beer. They may hate it, but nowhere near the intensity as homebrewers seem to. Most people I know have a case of Miller Lite or Coors Light on the side to keep them refreshed while still drinking beer. Has that been your experience in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, none of us are too pretentious to say this tastes terrible. Like, if it's good, it's good.
That's right.
And Miller Lite, it's a fine Pilsner.
Oh, it's the finest of the fine
and
Pilsners.
it's like what me and Spencer like to call palate fatigue, you know? We drink these beers that we're brewing all week long. We have people bring us, you know, this next big hype beer, whatever it may be. And literally at the end of the day or the end of the week, it's just like nothing sounds better than a Coors Banquet or a Miller Lite or something like that, you know?
Something
it's easy
magically
drinking. You don't have to
refreshing.
think about it. It's just simple.
Right here.
Here's my plug.
I mean, I'm getting sick of your beer right now. I feel like we should crack some Miller Lite. Okay, next question.
This is the most craft beer I think I've had with you. Usually it's like Miller.
It's
or
Miller
Coors.
Lite. Yeah, Miller or Coors Banquet. Next question. I feel like we've kind of talked about this, but I think there's some stuff in here that you guys can address a little bit more deeply. Ethan Cohen says, how big is your system and why did you pick that size? I think we went over that it was supposed to be smaller than 20 barrels, but it's 20 barrels.
Opportunity knocked.
The opportunity knocked. But he did say plans to distribute can and bottle. Maybe we can touch on that a little bit more.
Yeah, so 2 things. So our system, which you already said, it's a 20 barrel system, 4 vessel, but we also have a smaller system that will supply just our tap room. So we got a 3.5 barrel system with 3.5 barrel tanks, and that allows us to kind of some flexibility to do some off the wall stuff or some styles that we want to brew that might not appeal to the market so much, or might not sell as well. You know, beers like a red ale or a brown ale, they don't move that fast,
Right.
But we still enjoy them, and we know people out there enjoy them. So we want to have those in the tap room as well.
Yeah, I think I can't wait for you guys to have a red ale on tap.
Yeah.
Like a
Same
classic
here.
Irish red ale. There's nobody doing that anymore, man. We did an episode recently on American Amber Ale, and the response we got, just to let you guys know, by the way, people want American Amber Ale. It's just that it's not my theory, my hypothesis is that its lack of availability is creating this impression that people don't want it. But that's just because we know that hazy New England IPA is going to sell more. So this is me imploring you to make a nice hoppy amber ale. I'm sure you have plans.
That's why we're making the big macro stuff that we don't want, like the super hazy slushy bombs. I mean, that's not what we drink on our weekends. It's not what I drink ever. But if it facilitates, you know, that brown ale that I've been dreaming about,
Heck yeah.
or that, you know, Schwartz beer, those unsexy beers that are ultimately better, in my opinion, then yeah, we're gonna make them.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. All right, next question. This is a really good one. A really, really good one by Glenn Reese. He says, what was the most unexpected thing you ran into? I'd be curious of all of your guys' perspective on that. He says, whether it's a business thing, a brewing process thing, or something else, but what issue just came out of nowhere?
I don't know about issue, but basically our system is powered by a boiler. So in the system we bought, it was a la carte, basically everything came with it. We're like, fantastic, this is awesome. And then like, okay, so we have to install the boiler. Oh, yeah, that cost a lot of money.
Oh man.
Yeah, that was certainly something that jumped up. You know, and just for comparison's sake, if your boiler costs $100,000 to buy it, it's going to cost you $100,000 to install it. So back into the whole, when you're building your business plan, there are certain things that the device itself is not maybe all that expensive, but getting it hooked in and plugged in. A glycol chiller is another great example. The unit itself may run you $40,000. It's going to run you $50,000 in plumbing and piping. So you've got to really be careful, not just the piece of equipment itself, but what do I need to spend to get it operational in my building?
My God.
That's the kind of stuff that, and that's why I was getting back to like kind of our cost overruns. I didn't necessarily anticipate that our boiler would require so much effort. And kudos to our boiler team. Those guys basically lived with us for a month. And
Those guys are cool as hell
they
too.
were
Yeah,
Jeff and
fantastic.
Frank, we miss you.
Yeah, Johnson's Boiler here locally, they just did some amazing work, and they service other big brewery boilers as well. So we knew they had the skill. It was just literally labor of love for them.
I would imagine that there's a lot smaller versions of that or less expensive versions of that while you're building anything unexpected stuff. But yeah, that would be one of those things that I think if you've got a tight budget and you don't have that discretionary ability, to drop more cash on something, that could freak some people out, right? I got to spend double the amount of the cost of just the boiler to get this thing up and running. Right. Yeah.
Right.
No,
One of the ones that took me for a loop was finding. We all know that electricity comes from the circuit breaker, right? Who knew that you could actually overdo it by I'm going to buy this thing. I'm going to buy this thing.
Yeah.
Oh, this is 3 amps. This is 4 amps. Turns out, at the end of the day, we have maxed out pretty much all of our electrical panel without any of us really having a whole lot of forethought that on the beginning.
Yeah. that was going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good Lord.
we have just enough to get by if we want to add anything else, but man, all the things that we plug in require juice and it's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
So expect that if you buy a bunch of equipment.
Can you give us just a real quick Cliff's Notes version of what kind of system you got? Because you guys don't have fire, right?
We have a steam system. It's from, like I said, it's a 4-vessel from Deutsche. It's got semi-automatic. It won't run through the processes for us, but we can touch a button and valves will open up, which is pretty slick.
badass,
All the pumps are variable. There's some sexy, bells and whistles on it, but
Yeah. But it is steam.
On the brew house or the fermentation side, Brad can go in more like literally temp ramps and stuff like that, all automated.
Yeah, we can do gradient temp levels on it. So if I want to drop, we start off our lager warm. When we want to drop it down in temp, we can do it gradually. So I could set, hey, drop it to 55 in the next 24 hours. It's also got an auto carb feature on there with a solenoid, auto blow off, so we can do spunding. It's got pressure sensors on it, so we can see the volume to the tank as well as track fermentation. It's got a bunch of bells and whistles, and
we can do all that from our house too. Our previous establishments were not nearly as glamorous. This is obviously as good as it gets.
Yeah, my favorite thing is being able to actually drop temperature of a tank. I can't tell you how many Saturdays and Sundays I had to go into the brewery just to change the temperature of a tank to crash it because it was on that schedule. And now I can do that from home, which is
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's going to save me a lot of time, and
Well, you won't have to sleep at the brewery. Wait. Yeah, you might
he
still
already
do
did.
that.
I didn't sleep. I was
So
awake the whole
Brewed,
time.
yeah, bro, midnight brew session.
So with that said, Deutsch, they make fantastic product, but that's not like the normal one. The guy told us we were literally in the top 1% of feature-rich systems.
Oh, really?
Sold, yes.
Yeah, that's wild.
So we have
I think the other thing that jumped up and kind of caught us by surprise, and this will vary state to state, but in January of last year, California changed some of its building code requirements for some seismic protection. So again, not knowing that it was required at that moment, we then had to basically anchor all of our fermenters to the ground because they were, the engineering calcs showed that they could be potentially toppled during a decent sized earthquake. That was never instituted in California until January of last year. So now we've got an additional cost. We had to pay for the engineering calcs. And by the way, engineers, you guys make way too much money.
I wish I was an engineer.
And then
that's all I'm saying.
actually secure the vessels to the ground, right? So now we're doing, lag anchors into concrete and just little stuff like that. It just starts to pile up over time.
Yeah. Very cool. Patrick Scherer, I'm going to say. TTB approval process, navigating regulations, etc. Is this your domain, Matt?
Yeah, this would be mine. Wasn't too bad. Maybe I did my research and stuff like that, and a lot of that is in the past now. Well, not past, but paperwork, of course.
Well, you didn't share too much about your background. Is that something that your personality is the type who's into the data type stuff anyways, right? You're...
Yeah, I guess. I'm a programmer. You're referring to that. Yeah. So how I got started into brewing. No.
We forgot to focus on you, Matt. I want to hear your start, man.
No. The quick rundown. Yeah, I'm Matt. I moved to this area quite a while ago, and I moved to an area that had a extensive craft beer scene, whatever, up in Seattle area. And I came here, and this was 2005, and I just could not find the beer that I used to like and love. And so I was like, well, shoot, it looks like you can make your own beer. And so, and luckily I had a friend at the time. He was an extract brewer at the time, and he kind of showed me those ropes and stuff. And then one day, you probably had like the typical not pamphlets, but catalogs, in your bathroom. Of course, it's like beer porn back then or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was noticing like, oh, wait, these kits, like, these ones are cheaper. What does that mean? The whole all grain. And then at that point forward, it just opened the floodgates. And
yeah, you were one of the most, you were, I mean, we have a kind of a group of friends that got together and were kind of the most obsessed homebrewers in town, I think. And yeah, you were one of the most obsessive homebrewers I knew.
And I have a quick story about Marshall. So everybody knows Marshall just loves super uber hoppy IPAs and stuff.
Yeah, you know me.
First time I met Marshall, it was at, he mentioned I was involved in the board of our local homebrew club. Anyways, he shows up at our annual meeting kind of thing.
Where's this going?
First time. And he shows up with his Pliny the Elder clone.
Oh, I did make a double IPA.
Yeah, he's all trying it, and you were like introduced into the pack, if you will, and we're like, yeah, this guy seems like a good guy. Come on in.
He actually brought homemade beer as opposed to, so that was the problem, right? We talked about that on a prior episode. That it seemed like a drinking club more, but there was like five of us in the club six of us in the club that still like to brew beer. Yeah, I remember that beer. That was a pretty good one.
I remember it being a good beer.
Yeah, I should make it again. It'd probably be terrible.
Yeah,
that's what I tell myself, but. Yeah. Well, so back to TTB stuff, though. What was that process like for you?
Yeah. So going back to what Don said earlier about how COVID kind of made things harder and some things easier, I actually experienced the process being very easy because I believe that they were probably underwhelmed with new startups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I literally had people calling me and seeking me out to finish up all the tasks and stuff involved. Literally, I think it was the Saturday after Christmas, and like the ladies calling me to finish up the paperwork like over the phone.
Last Christmas.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Oh, sorry. No. Sorry.
2019.
Well, we had all of our stuff in, but there was a change we were going to do with the cold box. So they're very particular about like the diagrams and stuff and how the layout of the brewery is and the flow from production to if you have a tap room and all that sort of stuff. But it was after Thanksgiving, actually, I believe. But there was one final thing we were changing because we are changing the size of our cold box, the serving one.
You gotta see. I would never consider that you have to like all the sizing and the measurements and all that has to be. That's crazy to me.
And I think Matt's kind of understating the effort he put into it. It was easy, yes, because I think COVID meant that there were less people that needed TTB resources. But Matt also put frankly, a shit ton of work into what he submitted to them, so it was easy for them to look at it and make some brief suggestions and then finalize it.
That's true. There's a lot of documentation. I mean, from all the partners, obviously. All the partners involved, you have to, you're being fingerprinted. Like it's a lot of.
Good Lord.
But it goes back to your original construct. Are we a brew pub? Because that is one track that you go down. That's different than if you're a brewery with a tasting room.
Right.
So even in the most fundamental construction processes, you have to decide what you want to do.
Right.
Because once you step off that ledge, it costs you a lot of money to go back and pivot midstream. So to Matt's point, are we serving from a cold box? Are we all of that stuff comes back to how you originally set yourself up.
That's crazy. Yeah, because you were telling me about how you have to plumb the cold box to the.
There's a very specific distinction between a brewery and then a brew pub.
Yeah.
And
it's crazy. I knew that was going to be a deeper question. Here's one for Brad and Spencer. Scaling recipes. I think it's a good one because I remember listening to podcasts a decade ago and people talking about how, doing a pro-am or something, and you have to take the recipe and you have to change your homebrew recipe because scaling is not linear. Is that true?
Most of my experience, there's been very few recipes where I've taken them from a homebrew size and scaled it up. My previous job, I was lucky enough to, just start with a 7 or 15 barrel batch and go from there. And so I've kind of just kept that same mindset. Hey, let's give it a shot on this or tweak some things. So I don't do too much scaling, but when I do, I just take a look at percentages, and then I also use the scaling function in BeerSmith, and that's served me well so far.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like BeerSmith, when in the beginning, I was this is a little known secret. I was a original beta tester for BeerSmith for Mac when BeerSmith 2 was coming out. I know. So back then the scaling function was linear, but and I mean, like, if I went from 5 to 10 gallons, it would just double everything, and it was no issue. But I feel like Brad changed something in it recently to where it's not like that. It asks you a question before you scale it, and there's other things that go on and change. And if I go 5 to 10, there's like, fractions and stuff that are involved, and it's not the same. So perhaps there is something there that it's accounting for now. I don't know.
One of the things that you find when you scale from a homebrew system to a big one is the efficiencies are not the same.
Yeah.
Like boiling on a turkey boiler in a backyard is very different from a steam boiler in a brewery. You can't expect that, if I just double everything or triple or whatever, it's going to be the same. It's just not how it works. Yeah. You have to actually learn both systems and figure out, okay, this is how they talk to each other.
Right.
Well, and I think that kind of goes back into the brew house itself, right? Not without revealing, exact percentages. I think we've been pleasantly surprised with the percentages we've been getting from the system that we have today.
Yeah, actually, so we did a lot of these beers on the homebrew scale first, and we scaled them up, and we've been trying to make them work as well as they were on the homebrew scale, and it was actually pretty easy. They don't really, the beer we're drinking right now tastes pretty damn close. Well, not the one right now, but the one before this one was pretty damn close to what it was when we made it on the homebrew side, like 6 months ago.
Do you find that this is my question, do you find that when you scale a recipe from homebrew to commercial in the times that you've done it pretty much, pound for pound, like the same thing, that they end up tasting the same? Pretty close. I'm kind of a lazy brewer in the sense that if I write a recipe at home that says, okay, it's 12 and a half pounds, and that makes it like 10%. If I scale up to a big size, and that's going to be like a weird bag, won't be like a full bag, like a bag and like 3/4, that's a 2-bag recipe now, just for the sake of convenience. I think that's common among commercial brewers, right? It's super common. You're not going by the ounce anymore. I'm not weighing out 47 pounds of Crystal 40. That's not going to happen. Our 1050, our 1052 pale ale is now a 1054 pale ale. Oh, right. Well, it doesn't. It's rounding up or down to the full bag preferably, but sometimes we get crazy and it's a half bag. So it's either half or full. So. And it's not like you're weighing it out. You're feeling it. Right. Same thing with hops too. Like a lot of the hops we use, they come in 11-pound bags. So we're geared on trying to use 11 pounds as like, okay, well, it's either a full bag or is it 2 bags? Is it 1.5 bags? Because I generally will try and avoid like, it's 3.75 pounds. It looks more like 5.5 pounds. I forget who I was talking to. It was in an event, I believe, in New Zealand, and a brewer there was saying when people, they love to share. It might have been in Garage Project or something like that, but they were saying that they love to share their recipes with homebrewers, but homebrewers are like, they want half of grams, a half of a gram, and these brewers are like, I don't think that way. I don't lose sleep over everything. You can't taste the difference between 21 and 22 IBAs. Do not say that to a home brewer, Spencer. You know this, man. I'm sure they can. I'm sure the home brewers have very, very precise palates, but those of us in the game know that you can't taste 21 from 22. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go with the path of least resistance whenever I get an opportunity to. Yeah, I think that makes the most sense as well. It's the most economical, right? Right, because you're doing it that way. So from an accounting standpoint, like trying to just imagine if you were like, we have 12.8 pounds left of Mosaic. You mean like 13? Yeah, exactly. It's pretty close. Like we're just gonna call it 13. Yeah, that's all we're gonna use. We're not gonna bust open another pack. No, I'm not gonna have a bag of hops, oxidizing over the course of however long it is gonna be in the cold box until we use it again for 0.2 pounds. That's not gonna happen. So John Lee asked, it looks like about 6 questions in one. So I think some of them, what is your background? We've already done that. How big is the town where you're located? And what size is the brewery? Do we want to? I feel like we've kind of already hit that. Oh, we nailed that. Okay, yeah, I agree. We'll move on. It's a big town, big brewery. This is a good one. What is your target market? People who have money. Everyone, right? Yeah, anyone who wants to pay for beer. No free beer here. Yeah, just samples. Yeah, And our target market is essentially right where we built our building. And if you again back to the craft beer summit and what we learned when we were there, that was very valuable. Millennials and Gen Zs are more than willing to support a local brewery over a national brand. Yeah. They're more than willing to pay
for the premium malt and the premium yeast that we're using in those pints. So we're not in the, $4 pint lager area. That, I think, is our target market. Folks that have the economic stability to support the craft of what we're doing.
I feel like also, and this is not a diss, the millennial, the Gen Z, the younger generations, which we're on the cusp of that anyways, I feel like that there's an appreciation that they have, that they see value in the fact that you might be going with Mecca or Root Shoot or Imperial Yeast or Omega Yeast or whoever it is that they see value that you're not just going with the big guy, right? Who doesn't really have name recognition with them anyways, but they hear that you're going with a craft malt, what is ultimately a craft yeast. You're using hops from these businesses that are working their tails off to provide you with the best product possible, and they'll pay more for beer because of that. And I feel like there's an element of that has to be a part of your target market. And honestly, that is your smoothie drinking any IPA, right? But then you've got, and this is what I love about what you guys are doing. You've got a simple Helles. You're going to make I'm sure you'll make a American Light Pilsner, and it's just capturing as many people as you can, because it's not about pretense. It's about beer.
I want to make sure when anybody walks through our doors that they don't just have one beer to choose from or one offering to choose from, whether it be a seltzer, cider, mead. I want them to have multiple options.
Yeah.
So if you get that one person there, it's like, I can't have gluten. We got multiple options for you to choose from. You don't have to choose the only one that you can drink. So.
And you're going to do the best possible job you can representing a gluten-free beer, a cider. Yep. And I love that. God,
hell yeah, if we're putting our name on it, we're going to kill it.
Exactly.
That's as simple as it is. But
I can't wait to try a gluten-free beer, to be honest. I've still yet to try one. But there's cider, and that's cider. That's gluten-free. So
there's like tons and tons of beer styles out there, and it feels almost like sacrilegious to make like 4 just because that's what people want to buy. Like, that's not why I got into it. I didn't get into it to just make, I'm just going to make hazy IPAs all day long. That's what I love. Now, there's all kinds of styles of beer out there, so we want to make stuff that people can explore too. We don't want to just have what everyone's already had. We want something different because there's so much out there that we just generally don't see.
Yeah, I think the thing that totally we would all geek out at if somebody who was typically a Yellow Jacket drinker came in and left our establishment having found a real craft beer that they loved as much.
Yeah.
Educate your consumer and get them to shift their palate into the craft game over, the big breweries. So.
Without belittling them for liking what they like.
No,
I mean, that's been my big thing with all the, I can't believe you drink Miller Lite. Well, I can't believe that you're disregarding 80% of the beer drinking population. Right. That's my take is you can't do that.
I can't believe you drink a Jamba Juice with your beer.
Yeah, exactly. that makes you have to floss afterwards. Yeah. John has another couple of questions that I think are interesting. How big will your tap room be, which is connected to the brewery, I think is interesting.
Yeah, so our tap room, our total drinking space is right around 5,000 square feet. We have 3,000 square feet in the tap room, obviously air conditioned and heated. We have a patio outside, which we call our back porch, and that's another just under 2,000 square feet. So tap room proper is right at 3,000. It's a big tap room. I think once folks come in, like, they know it's big, but once they see it, then they're kind of stunned.
It's gorgeous. It's the biggest.
It's beautiful.
It's
the biggest air-conditioned tap room anywhere nearby
in the Central Valley.
In our area, that's like, oh my God, you can do that?
Yeah, when it's 106 outside.
Yeah, right.
Sitting under a mister with a fan just doesn't.
And we bought comfortable chairs too. We don't have your generic cut and paste steel stools that have no comfort to them at all. These are actually damn comfortable chairs.
If I may, I feel sorry for whoever's got to clean those things though, because they're fabric, right? You went with the softer fabric.
Yeah,
it's Scotch Garden, a garden hose.
That's the hopefully right. Yeah. He has one more question that goes along with the taproom stuff. Will you have a kitchen or outside food?
Both. So we're in the process of getting kind of like a deli light permit so that we can do basic stuff in house. But we're also lucky enough to be literally blocks away from a number of restaurants, so it's super easy to get food from the outside. And we're also set up for food trucks. So we have some internal construction that makes it very easy for food trucks to pull up and plug in, not have to run their generators and kind of sneak everybody out with the exhaust. They can draw house power.
That's when we learned about circuit breakers. with maximum draw. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll push you over. If you're close on your electric panel, a food truck will push you over.
Yeah, I imagine so. I know. Yeah, so that's kind of the new model, right? Is food trucks for people who don't want to start a brew pub. They want to be a brewery with a tap room and offering food. Now with COVID, I understand that at least in the state of California or where we're at, based on our tier, you have to buy some food on your ticket in order to buy beer.
Yeah. Ordinance requires if you're going to consume on site, there's got to be some food with it, and it's not supposed to be top ramen or a couple of noodles. It's supposed to be substantial food. So there's different ways that folks have addressed that, and I think by and large everybody's done a decent job. But I also expect as we kind of get more folks vaccinated and we get out of the COVID wave, that requirement's going to go away, and we'll get back to what we really started out to do.
Yeah, food trucks and having fun, and yeah, I'm with you on that. Well, I know you guys got to get to back to work. I know you guys are going to the brewery after this, so just a couple more questions. There's a couple good ones here. Daniel Feltimo says, I love brewing beer, but for me to go pro would ruin a fun hobby. Does the idea of having to make beer and satisfy the public and deal with the criticism and oversaturated market worry you?
As long as you stay off Untapped, it's a pretty cool thing.
100%.
Every pro brewer out there is like, yes. Don't even look
to
at
anybody who's not a pro brewer who's using Untapped, you're using it wrong. Don't say, I don't like IPAs, 1 star. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't use it, so.
Yeah, we don't either. I mean, I'll look at it. Brad won't. I'll filter it through me to tell him, hey, man, this one's doing well, because he won't sleep at night if we look at Untapped.
Oh, Brad.
Too many things go through my brain, man.
Maybe I'll sign up just to make you feel better.
But to answer the question, it is super cool to be able to share. This is by and large an art form. So it's super cool to be able to share our art with people and hear the feedback. I mean, of course you get bad feedback and not everybody's going to love everything you make. That is what it is. But when someone picks up your pale ale or your stout and is like, man, this is really great. Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
That's all I'm looking for at the end of the day.
I mean, as a home brewer, there are 2 types of people you share beer with. There are your close beer brewing friends who you just expect criticism from because they know that they're your friend because they know that you make decent beer. So they're trying to just pinpoint the small stuff, right? This is what I don't like about this. But then there's your mom and your aunt and your brother and your sister and your neighbors and all of that who are saying, you got to go pro, you got to go pro. There's an element to me of what you guys do in brewing on that level and hearing from random folks who don't have that emotional investment in you. This is really damn good. That I think would be just feel really nice.
It does. And like you said, those close brewing folks we have, like you, have never pulled a punch on any beer that we've brewed. We've known Marshall for years now. Marshall's not one just to fluff you. He's going to tell you,
sorry,
hey, you know what? This would be better if you guys tried this.
I've not been hypercritical.
No, he's never, because our beers are that good. But
right.
He hasn't pulled punches though.
Yeah, I won't. I try not to.
Our mutual friend Aaron is the guy that pulls all the punches.
Oh, he knows it. That's Aaron's. Hey, Aaron, I hope you're listening, you jerk. Yeah, little jerk. Okay, here's a question for. This is a good one. We haven't even touched on this yet. Blake Morillas says, being a Californian, water usage and cost is always on your mind. What are the municipal issues, if any, with the amount of water that's used during production of a commercial batch? That's nuts. That's a good question.
Yeah, and it was something we knew nothing about until we actually engaged the city on the water that we needed. So in short, you've got commercial rates for water and you've got residential rates for water. In California, the residential rates are probably what crippled most people. Commercial rates are a little bit different, but I think what everybody struggles with where we're at is the quality of water, right? So our water in our area here in the Central Valley is technically not great, and it fluctuates throughout the day. So if you become a little bit of a water engineer, and thank you so much, Paul, for
no joke, right?
educating us in that,
thanks,
right?
Paul.
So and I'm going down there and I'm pulling water samples. I pulled probably 20 water samples. I'd go at 2 a.m., I'd go at 5 a.m., I'd go at noon, and just to see where our water was shifting throughout the day.
Yeah,
which led us to the ultimate fact that we have to have an RO system because we cannot depend on our water to be reliable. So, the guys strip it down and they build it back up depending on what beer they're going to make.
Yeah.
And so it's not the cost of the water. That's not really the issue.
Is that pretty trivial? I mean, it does cost, but
it does. But again, it's commercial water use rates, and it's very different than industrial or in residential.
Residential.
So
okay.
So our water bill is not something that we're concerned about at this point.
Okay.
It's the quality of the water that we're getting.
Yeah. What a great response. Yeah.
And we're being conscious with usage. So we bought a RO system that is extremely efficient, and there is very little waste from that point. And then, from a brew standpoint, from our we we pull from the CLT to do our cooling, and that literally goes back into the HLT.
Yeah.
So we're being conscious with that.
Yeah, there's an element of just being environmentally conscious. And I mean, you guys are giving your grains to a local farmer. We've got a lot of farms around here. Yep. I had a beer with him the other day, and that was cool to meet the guy picking up grain to serve to his chickens and cows and whatever it is he's serving them to, and trying to keep that together. There's one more thing I want to talk about before we go, but there's one very serious question here. Final one. I'm sorry to everyone who we didn't get to. You guys all left so many great questions, but we've only got so much time. Jason Smart says, what are you expecting your average lifespan of a pair of socks to be, and which brand do you prefer?
Kirkland wool. They don't sell them all year in the store, but you can get them on the website, and it's like 6 pairs for $15, and they are wonderful.
Is this really a thing? Like,
no, it really is totally
brewers?
a thing. Like, between brewers, we talk about socks and boots and pants. Like, I too enjoyed the Kirkland socks. If you can't get them, you can also get the People socks from Amazon. I like those ones. Okay. It's like $30 for 3 pairs, and I generally see them lasting about a year. And we use the shit out of our socks.
Why socks? Why? I don't get it.
Because
I feel like I'm missing something.
All right, so your boots, depending on what kind of boots you wear, you might incur some water in there. And,
yeah, sure.
And the other thing is, like, they have a lot of padding. That's a big part of it.
Because you're on your feet all day.
12, 14 hours a day.
Yeah, okay.
Comfortable socks are priority number one.
Yeah, I mean, you got to realize we're in, steel-toed, chemical resistant, boots all day long, because that's what you really should be wearing anyways. And it gets tough. I mean, a day when you're on your brew boots for 5 or 6 hours, your back feels it. So trying to be as comfortable as you can.
In the summertime, those boots hold a lot of heat too. So you want to wick away as much of that moisture as possible. Otherwise, you have pruny feet at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. Jason, I thought that was a joke question, but I feel like it was actually pretty
it's
serious.
true.
Yeah.
We're going to start a podcast on brewer clothing. It's a thing. It's a thing.
Yeah, the brew duds. We'll call them
on the way over here, Brad and I were literally talking about one of our other friends just tried another brand of boots. I'm like, what do you have to say about them?
Oh my God, nerds.
Was it a good boot? What's the smell like?
Well, even boots I go through once every 6 months. I just tear through them.
Yeah.
So,
Tim.
Boots, socks, all that stuff's important.
Any boot sponsors out there, we're listening.
Well, even back to apparel, right? So we're all, some days we're wearing jeans, some days we're wearing cargos, and Spencer comes in, he's like, I got these pants. You guys got to see these pants. And they're made out of this flexible fire hose fabric from Duluth. And now we all have, shout out to Duluth. We all have Flex Fire Hose pants because they are fantastic in that environment.
Yeah, Duluth Trading Company. If you'd like to sponsor the Brewosophy podcast,
send us some more overalls. I'm a 32, 34. I'll take them.
Before we finish up, let's talk a little bit about what we've been kind of working on together, collaborating with Brewosophy and Crone Wolf. I've mentioned it on the show a few times in the past. As Crone Wolf gets up and going, and as things with COVID start to tamp down a bit, you're going to start hearing a lot more about these guys. We've got some crazy ideas kind of flowing right now. One of the fun things about being friends with dudes who are starting a brewery like this is that there's an openness to experimenting literally with types of beers, but also in the Brewosophy sense, and doing one of the big questions that we get often is, how does this apply on a commercial scale, on a larger scale? And we want to answer that question. Brad, Don, I know you and I have been talking about this quite a bit lately.
Yeah, I mean, it's our key to success, we believe, is staying innovative and putting out beer that we really think people are going to enjoy, knowing that everybody has a little bit of a different taste bud and a little bit of a different palate. But if you don't have any science behind that, you're kind of throwing darts, or you're copying somebody else who threw the dart, right?
Right.
So I'd rather get into that data collection. I want to figure out what people tend to enjoy and don't enjoy, and even down so much as varying the amounts of what we're putting in certain beers.
Yeah.
If there's a way, and you already have set up that blind taste test model, which, I mean, that was really the first day I met you.
Yeah. And you were here doing an experiment. Yeah,
right. And it was so eye-opening because here I am. I'm kind of like the new guy in the group, and I'm thinking that there's a wrong answer, right? What do you perceive? And I'm like, what should I say? And you said, put what you get, because everybody gets something different.
That's right. Yeah.
And
it's subjective.
That's when I realized that there's really no right or wrong answer. I'm going to perceive things a certain way, and I'm going to enjoy those, or I'm not. So our goal is to get to what, gets some sort of density around what people enjoy in certain styles of beers, so that we can make a better product going forward.
And I feel like there's an element, Brad and I used to talk about this way before Crone Wolf even, of what makes I think what makes Brewlosophy so appealing to the group of people out there who find us appealing, which still blows my mind. Weird. Yeah, very weird, I know. But is that there's an element of interacting with your beer in a way that's different than just getting buzzed off of it or just enjoying the way it tastes or whatever it is. There's a way of being involved with beer, interacting with your beer, and we want to give that to more people and also provide for an industry that we love. I mean, you guys are a part of the commercial industry. I feel like a lot of people have we're a part of that on the media level, and we want to answer that question. Where does this stuff happen, or where does this stuff go when you do it on a commercial scale? And so what we've been talking about is replicating a lot of what we already do on Brewlosophy just on a commercial scale, whether that's a 7-barrel batch or a 15-barrel batch, just depending on risk, because you got to sell beer. But and so just I want our listeners and those folks out there reading what we do to know that that's kind of the direction we're planning to go. We're coming up with some fun names for this series, and whether it turns into podcast material or website material, we'll just have to see about that. But I think it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to do all the experiments. And the data collection is huge. Finding out what people are interested in. So I'm not going to be selfish and say, you know what, 1 million people told me they want this beer to be this way, but I'm going to brew it this way because that's how I like it.
No,
we're all about doing what our customers want, and if to get their input on our beers and see what they think. And hey, here's another way that we could possibly do it. What do you think of this? We're always willing to go that route, and yeah, it's just nice talking to our customers and people that enjoy our beer and just seeing what they think and what we can change, how we can make it better, because no beer is ever perfect. It can always be improved upon.
Amen to that. And there's also an element, I think, of even if you've got a perfect beer, I feel like brewing is art and science. It's this beautiful blend of both. And when you can tickle both of those itches, as it were, there's something really appealing about that. And for somebody to be able to come in and go to one side of the bar and just drink if they want to, but then, hey, if you come down here, we got this cool little experiment you can be a part of, and your name goes into the annals of, brewing science. And I think that's really cool because you're a part of it. You're contributing to something greater, if you want to look at it that way. Well, I've been looking forward to doing this show for a year now. I'm so glad it finally came to fruition. If you ever are in the Fresno, Clovis area, you have to stop by Crow and Wolf. There's a really good chance you'll see me. Not that you want to, but I'll probably be there. I've been spending a lot of time there already anyway. So thank you guys so much for coming on the show. Is there any final words before we head out that you guys want to leave our listeners with?
No, thanks for giving us a listen, and I hope some of your questions got answered. And yeah, look forward to seeing you guys.
I'm hoping this is the first of many fun podcasts we have to do with Marshall.
Yeah, I think doing this, it'll be interesting. Doing this every 3 or 4 months as we go forward, as we've got more volume and maybe our experiences wearing a little bit differently. I think it'd be interesting to kind of track that over time.
I'm hoping we can make something more out of this, because I feel like there's such opportunity with your guys' perspective. Not that it's terribly unique, but in our experience and where we're at, it's a unique approach to doing this. And we'll see. I hope the listeners let us know what they think about this episode, because I think people are going to want to hear more and more and watch the growth and kind of be a part of what you guys are doing. So again, I appreciate you guys coming on.
Yeah, agreed. I think this could be considered a pre, because we theoretically don't have a finished tap room.
That's right.
Although we are selling beer, and it's out there now, but we are not like full, like 100%. So there's going to be like even learning lessons from here forward.
Yeah, and if you are cruising through the Central, if you come to California, take the 4 hours out of your out of your day to swing up to Central Valley. There's good beer here these days. But yeah, if you're swinging through Fresno, Clovis, even during COVID, hit me up. Hit these guys up. There's beer there to be had, and we'll figure it out for you. So, well, just a reminder that the newest podcast on the Brewlosophy Network, the Brew Lab, will be hitting the waves very soon. We've dropped an introduction episode that's currently available pretty much anywhere podcasts are served up. Please go subscribe now so you're notified when we start releasing regular episodes. And if you're as excited as we are about the Brew Lab, help us spread the word. We'd really appreciate it. All right, don't forget, you can read more about all the crazy sciencey stuff we're up to at brewlosophy.com. The Brewlosophy podcast is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors as well as all of our rad listeners. We seriously could not do this without you. Cheers to everyone who has subscribed and left a review of our show. It makes a huge difference. If you haven't yet, please consider doing so. Head over to brewlosophy.com/support to view a list of ways you can easily help us to continue producing this podcast. If you want a reward for your support, visit patreon.com/brewlosophy. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Brewlosophy podcast. Until then, think beer.
Start off the morning with some hot tea, lemon and honey, cause it suits my throat. Put some herb in the bowl, yeah, it's homegrown. Ain't gotta go through the middleman, no.